New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Tracy Brown. I am your host for the Inclusive Church. I'm glad you joined me today. And if you want to drop a hello in the chat, feel free to do so. Every Tuesday at noon Mountain Time, we come together and talk about, think about, recommit to building inclusive spiritual communities where oneness does not require sameness. And today, since I do not have a featured guest, I will be doing a Toolkit Tuesday, which means I will be just sharing some ideas with you, some tips that you can use. And I always try to keep those shows, the Toolkit Tuesday shows, to 30 minutes or less. And I'm pretty sure I will do that today. So you will be able to get in, focus, and then go on to the next thing that's on your schedule today. I always like to remind myself and you that when I'm saying inclusive church, I'm using church specifically and intentionally to remind us all that church is not a piece of property. It is not a building. It is the people who make up the church. And the reason we want to be inclusive is so that all people, that many different kinds of people can actually feel that your church is a refuge for them, is a foundational base for them in their lives, and is a place they can go to learn and to share and to practice spiritual principle. So let's dive in today. I am so very aware that we are in the first few days of June, and in many places, June is Pride Month. And I really had to think about, do I want to speak about Pride Month and being inclusive when it's right now Pride Month? So if you haven't already planned something, you may or may not, it's not likely that you're going to do something different than what you've already planned. And I always think a couple months in advance, like back in March, I actually thought, maybe we should talk about Pride Month now in March, 3 months in advance, so people can plan things. And I thought the same thing with Black History Month and with Hispanic Heritage Month and, all throughout the year. Do I want to offer some content 2 or 3 months before so that if people are looking for ideas, they have them or not? And so why talk about it now if you may not be able to change your plans? And I decided that it really was worth having a conversation about for several reasons. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a conversation with someone from a spiritual community in California, and they said to me that, well, we don't do anything special during Pride Month because we really work hard to be a safe space for the LGBTQ plus community all year long. And we had a conversation about that because I immediately asked, well, what do you mean you try to be a safe space? Talk to me about the try and talk to me about what you mean by safe space. And it was a great conversation, no shade intended. It was a really good conversation. Um, and it also made me think about how many other communities might be saying, well, yeah, it's Pride Month in our city. You know, there are different cities, towns, countries where Pride Month is celebrated in a different month of the year. But for many, many, many people, Pride Month is June. I thought, yeah, it's worth talking about, partially because of the conversation I had a couple of weeks ago, and partially because I may say something that will shift your thinking about what you still could do this month if you are so inclined. So let's first talk about that conversation I was in. We don't need to do anything because LGBTQ plus people, we're LGBTQ plus friendly all year long. Or we have a lot of LGBTQ plus people in our community and it's no big deal. And one of the things that flashed through my mind when I was in the conversation was that, wow, people who love you, friends and family who care about you, celebrate you all year long, or are friendly towards you, hopefully, all year long, or demonstrate that they care about you all year long. And then when your birthday comes around on the calendar, they don't say, hey, I care about you all year long. I don't need to do anything for your birthday. I don't even need to say happy birthday to you because I care about you. And I thought, well, it's not exactly the same, but it's kind of the same. If you've done a really good job in your spiritual community of encouraging and retaining people who identify as LGBTQ plus, then it doesn't mean that excuses you from recognizing, honoring, or celebrating their presence on the planet and their presence in your community during a month that has been designated for that purpose. Another thing that came to mind about that we don't need to, and again, the initial conversation was we try to honor or we try to include LGBTQ plus people all year long. I really was troubled by the word try. Now, I will say that I'm glad I asked. Like, talk to me more. What do you mean try? Because it wasn't try like, oh, we can't do it, or oh, this is so hard, and we are trying to do it, but we're not doing a good job of it. It was we are committed. I mean, the person I was in conversation with proceeded to tell me a long list of activities, a long list of conversations. It included things that were related to marketing. It included things that were related to problem solving. It was a very active and very full list of activities and intentions. And so I pretty much just coached them to use a different word than try. Like, we are doing a variety of things throughout the year to attract and retain LGBTQ plus congregants or people to attend our events. And so it was great. They walked away from the conversation saying, oh, I never really thought about how language could imply something different. So their commitment was clear. The piece around creating a safe space, if you if you've been around me much, you already know that I am very, very hesitant and often advise people, please don't say you're a safe space. Please don't promise that your space is safe because there's no way you can guarantee that. You can say, we are committed to providing a respectful environment, but you can't say that we are committed to making our place or our space safe for you because there are too many variables that have nothing to do with what the community does, and hundreds, if not thousands, of variables that are related to every individual person's experience, whether they will feel safe or not, no matter what you do. So, so that was that part of the conversation, and changing the verb from try to intend, or we do this and list these things. But the idea that we don't need to honor or celebrate or acknowledge even Pride Month, yeah, that doesn't fly. We honor other celebrations throughout the year. I actually, a couple of years ago, I did have someone say to me, "Oh, we don't do anything for Pride Month because we don't do cultural celebrations because we might leave someone out, so we don't celebrate any group because we don't want somebody to come up and say, hey, you didn't celebrate my culture." And I just kind of smile at that one because if we think we don't do any cultural celebrations, but then we do Mother's Day, or we celebrate Easter, or we do some special programming event for Father's Day, or for we do something at Christmas or in the Advent season. Those are all cultural. Some people will say, well, no, Easter is a religious celebration. Mm, not, not even gonna go there. So maybe it is cultural, maybe it is the culture of a specific religion, and in that case, it's still cultural. But or Christmas is religious. You're telling me you actually believe Jesus was born on the calendar date, December 25th, and that's why we celebrate that. So, okay, right. So I'm not going to argue with folks about it, but I think it's really interesting if we say the reason we're not going to celebrate Pride Month is because we don't celebrate any cultural uh, celebrations or holidays or events. So what else comes up in terms? Those are the two things I've heard most. Well, the third one that I've heard, and these three things are the ones that come up most when people say they don't do anything for Pride Month, or they don't feel they should do anything for Pride Month, but they are very inclusive. The third one is we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We would celebrate it, but we don't know what to do, and we don't know what's appropriate. And so, just like anything else where you're not sure, you go to people who are part of that identity group and you bring them in and you begin your planning 6 to 9 months in advance, and you get that input because you've made a commitment that when Pride Month comes, we are going to honor and celebrate it. And here we are back here 6 or 9 months in advance getting input and feedback because, yeah, you might not know if you've not done it before, but there are people who can guide you, who can make suggestions. And ideally, these would be people who are members of your community who could say, this is what would be meaningful for me, or this is how I think we can make a statement that is in alignment with what we teach spiritually, right? Because it's not about being politically correct. It is about demonstrating a commitment to the values and to the spiritual principles that you teach all throughout the year. So I do think it is important for our communities in New Thought to be doing something during Pride Month, but I'm not attached to what specifically that is. So finally, before I go to some examples, I guess the reason that I'm feeling that it's important to say this is because it's not an either or, right? So many times when I hear people say, well, we don't do anything special for Pride Month, it's like either if we're going to do something for Pride Month, but then we'd have to do things for all the other months. um, or we're going to do something for Pride Month, big something, or nothing at all. And it's really not an either or, right? Think about it as a both and. When we're being inclusive, so much of what we struggle with or that we're challenged by is because we're trying to think it's either got to be this, or this is right and this is wrong, or this is good and this is bad. So practice the both and approach. In my community, we can celebrate, we can honor, we can respect, we can market to, we can include people whose identity are in the LGBTQ plus community all year long. And we can have an event or do some kind of recognition during Pride. You don't have to choose between those two. Because in fact, if you only do something during Pride Month, that is probably more detrimental than like not doing any than doing nothing at all. Right? Oh, it's Pride Month. Oh, let me hang this banner. Or oh, it's Pride Month. Let's go be in the parade with our church's t-shirts on. And then all the rest of the year, there's nothing happening, and someone sees you at the parade and they come to, to your church a month later because they remember you were at the parade and they don't feel welcome. Yeah, and so that would be a performative approach to only do something during Pride Month. And so I don't recommend that. But you can do some special things during Pride Month and still keep your ongoing strategy in place all throughout the year. So what are some common ways or some things that are pretty common that different churches do and or have done, just so you have that in mind? And I guess a couple of these things you could still do. We're only on June 3rd, and depending on your church, you might be able to add something in before the end of the month. But I think for most of us, like that would be really challenging to add something in. So these are ideas for you to start thinking about for next year. Or there are ideas that, oh yeah, we've done that. Oh yeah, we do that. Oh yeah, we're doing that this year. And you can pat yourself on the back for already being in motion. Now, I could give you a list of 30 or 40 things. And if that's helpful for you, please reach out to me and we can have a conversation, or I can help you start your planning in, October or November for 2026. But what I'm going to share with you are just some of the high level, pretty common things that I have seen, experienced, or heard about. The most common in New Thought spiritual communities is to support and to march in or be a part of a local parade. And these are, I guess I'll start with two or three things that are external from inside your church. They are making a statement to the public, to the community where your church is based, right? The community your church lives in. And the number one thing is participating in, marching in, having a float in the local pride parade. Many of the churches that I'm familiar with make this an activity where the teenagers and young adults are really involved. And but for almost all of the churches I know who do this, there are people from all age groups who are involved. And in some communities, um, what I've heard is that this is also a way that the LGBTQ plus members of their church really feel supported and seen. And often it will be members of the church who will help to plan and coordinate what happens. In some communities, it's absolutely free to participate. You just have to sign up in advance. In other communities, there is a fee involved, which covers the expenses related to getting permits, as well as being the basis of an annual fundraiser for one or more groups in the LGBTQ plus community. So participating in the community parade. A number of churches also raise money to sponsor or co-sponsor events during Pride Month. And then a third thing that I've seen a number of communities do is while they may not have people show up at events, they will designate a certain amount of dollars to buy ads in in publications, in newspapers or magazines for the Pride Month edition of those magazines, and use it as a marketing approach that we're in this magazine. We really are inviting you to come and participate at our church. Internally, some of the things that are very common are one, to feature someone in the community who is LGBTQ plus, who identifies in that group as a featured speaker or featured musician during the month. I will say this is super, super common. And as a Black person who gets a lot of invitations during Black History Month, I'm careful about suggesting this. If that's the only time during the year that you have someone who identifies as LGBTQ plus on your platform in a visible way, then again, it becomes performative and doesn't have quite the same value. Another thing that I've seen happen a lot is, regardless of the identity or orientation of the speaker or speakers for the month, a number of churches will make sure that at least one Sunday, if not the entire month, the theme is somehow very, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's not supportive, but it is a theme that can very much be integrated with Pride Month examples, quotations from people who are LGBTQ plus, and it's easy to bring forward the visibility of LGBTQ plus people within the theme, whatever that theme is for the month. And I've also seen a number of churches choose a book of the month that allows them to connect the spiritual imperative and the identity group together in some way and then builded the talks for that month around that theme or that book of the month. And also, of course, especially communities that are primarily virtual have the opportunity, a number of them have shared with me videos that they have used for their music, that they will then be really supporting artists who identify as LGBTQ plus, or the lyrics in the song, or the visual images that are in the video. And they will be very deliberate all throughout Pride Month to make sure that there are images and music that send a subtle but very clear message. The last thing I want to mention is that Pride Month, really like every month, but Pride Month has some really low-hanging fruit related to intersectionality. And so, first and foremost, even to talk about Pride Month, that in our contemporary times, Pride Month in the 20th and 21st century, Pride Month is an outgrowth of the Stonewall experience. And yes, the Stonewall experience, some of you are like, why isn't she saying the Stonewall riots? Because I'm more likely to say the Stonewall massacre than riots. But the Stonewall experience really might not have happened if it weren't for trans women of color. And so race was a big factor in what happened at Stonewall. And in the succeeding months, if it had not been for Black folks who are on the LGBTQ plus identity spectrum, then we would not be where we are, and we would not be celebrating Pride Month in June. And so there's some opportunity for intersectionality around race and sexual orientation and gender identity, if you're willing to have that conversation. And also Juneteenth is in June. And so I do know of a couple of churches that have done Pride Month and Juneteenth together in a very beautiful dance. In the month, and using the context and the spiritual quality of freedom, and that brings me to my closing point. Don't miss intersectionality, but if you're going to miss anything, the one thing you absolutely cannot miss is the spiritual imperative. Please always, always, with everything that we're talking about in terms of being inclusive, if you can't find biblical scripture, science of mind textbook quotations, unity philosophy principles, if you are not able to connect what you are doing to the demonstration of your spiritual principles, your values, your spiritual values, not your emotional or personal values, your spiritual guidance, and the spiritual principles and practices that your church exists to teach. If you can't do that, then you're not ready to be inclusive. That is where the work begins. And all I can do is encourage you and remind you that this is why I talk about this incessantly. It is because I believe there is one God, there is one source of all life, and it has created everything from itself. And because of that, if we only look at humanity, even though I mean it is true for all creation, but if we only look at humanity, then every person on this planet is the face of God. is a face of God. And every person on this planet deserves to have an experience of their best possible life as they view it, as they understand it to be. That is why I do the work. That is why our spiritual communities, it's so important for us to be inclusive of all kinds of people and teach each other how to walk together in harmony, in unity, representing the love of God. So, Pride Month, spirituality, they do go together. And I hope that you will think about some of what I've shared today and maybe share one thing that came up for you with someone else so that we can continue the conversation beyond our time together today. This is the Inclusive Church. My name is Tracy Brown, and I'll see you again next Tuesday right here on the New Thought Media Network.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.